Thank you, Lashkan Corla, and I'd like to fully support the motion here tonight on the Fair Deal scheme, and I think it is an important motion, particularly for small farmers and small business people, self-employed, who are being hit with, I think, is unfair assessments on their income and their asset values, particularly when assessments for the Nursing Home Support Scheme. But the 7.5% cap per year on the asset value is unfair, and it creates a very serious distinction that does have a cooling effect on families in deciding whether to maybe put their loved one into a nursing home that might require care. And when you combine that with the lack of home care packages and the availability of home care packages across the country, it puts those families in a really difficult situation. And there is no doubt that there are farmers who are putting themselves at serious financial risk by trying to meet the costs rather than having the Nursing Home Support Scheme actually pick up and put their loved one into it. And I think this obsession that the government has with assessing asset values, particularly for people who may have an asset that has a substantial value but can derive very little income from it, is problematic. And indeed, it's not only in the Nursing Home Support Scheme, but it's also in the social welfare system that I think it is a real problem. You know, when you take, for example, that a farm could be valued at €1 million, but the income from that farm might only be €24,000 a year, I think that's the crux of the problem. So what I think would be a far fairer system is to assess the income derived from the asset rather than putting the value on the asset itself. But of course, that has a budgetary implication for the government, and that's obviously the reason why you haven't considered it in the past. And I think that it would be a far fairer system, and a system that could operate very easily and very effectively, because farmers and small business people would be preparing accounts and making returns, so the income could be assessed and could actually be seen. And rather than there may be a temptation to try and maybe hide assets because they're going to have an impact on the ability to pay, whereas on the income and the returns to the revenue or whatever, that situation wouldn't arise, and the income can be assessed easily. Because we have the same situation in the social welfare system, where somebody may own a house that has been maybe their parents' house or something like that, and when they go to access a social welfare payment, the asset value of that property is assessed and a means attributed to it, which bears no relationship to the actual means that can be generated from the rental income, for example, of that house. Because you could somebody with a house of a value of €80,000 have a means of maybe €200 a week out of it, where the rental market in that area, you might be lucky to get €80 or €90 a week for the rental of that property. And I think that's where this asset value assessment comes from. It's from the social welfare system, and it's been knitted into the Nursing Home Support Scheme. So I think that's the crux of the problem, really, Minister. And I know the motion is calling for the Interdepartmental Working Group report to be actually published, and it'll be very interesting to see when that is published, how you're going to actually look at altering the treatment of the assets. And I think unless you get to a system whereby you treat the income arising from that asset and assess that rather than the asset value itself, there will always be an unfairness in the system, and that is the problem and the crux of the problem overall. I would like Lashkan Corla as well just to have the opportunity just to speak a little bit about the actual payments from the Nursing Home Support Scheme to nursing homes, and particularly community nursing facilities, because I think the disparity between what they will pay, say for example in Donegal and in Dublin, is causing real problems for community-owned facilities particularly. And I'm thinking particularly of Arsgidor in West Donegal, where it's a community-owned facility, where the community were facilitated by the HSE in establishing the facility many years ago, and the community never envisaged that they would still be actually run at this stage, almost 15 years further on. And the amount of income that they can get from the Nursing Home Support Scheme is very restrictive, and leaves them constantly in a financially precarious situation, where every couple of years there is a financial crisis, and the sustainability of the facility is always put into question. And it's a very important facility because there is no easily accessible public facility, and there is no interest from the private sector either in providing facilities in that particular area. And because it's more marked in rural areas, I think as well, because there is no private business for nursing homes. Everybody is dependent on the nursing home support scheme, and all the patients are, whereas in the larger urban areas there may be possible private business that's available for the nursing homes that they can supplement their income from through there as well. And I think also I have to mention, and debating on the nursing homes and the nursing home support scheme, is also the need to have a rapidly roll out construction programme for public facilities right across the country, because we are heading into a massive crisis. Because with the demographic changes, the number of beds required is going to double probably or more in the next 10 years, and we need to see that those community facilities built and developed as well, because they are an integral part, particularly in Donegal, where the community nursing homes, community hospitals are an integral part of the actual working of Letterkenny University Hospital, where the system operates that people are moved quickly out from the University Hospital into the community hospitals, freeing up beds and keeping the whole system working. So I think we have to address that building programme as a matter of urgency as well. But in the context of tonight's motion, I think if we move to a system where the income derived from the asset is assessed rather than the asset value, that's the only way we'll have a fair system that people can actually avail of. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy.